Buongiorno. In this session, we're going to discuss ERA and ARA verbi. To begin with, it's important to review that the infinitive is the to form of the verb. It's a verb that's not conjugated, and in Italian, infinitives generally end in ARA, ARA, and ERA. Again, during this session, we will focus on ARA and ERA. Looking at the present tense expression, scrivo una mail, it could be translated to I write an email, I am writing an email, or I do write an email. Also, this expression, scrivo una mail, could be meant to indicate something that's going to occur in the near future. Next, let's take a look at the endings for ERA verbi. Starting with the io form, we have io, o, tu, I, lei, e, lui, lei, e, noi, iamo, voi, ite, and loro, ono. Once again, without the subject pronouns, o, I, e, iamo, ite, ono. Now what you will notice is that the voi form is highlighted in yellow. And this is because there's only one difference between the ERA and the ARA verb forms. And that is the ite form. The voi form for ERA verbi is ite, and we'll notice in a few slides here that the ARA verbs use the ite instead in the voi form. So this is very useful to know because once you know the ERA, you practically have the ARA learned as well. Well, let's take a look at a verb that uses ERA. And this is the verb partire, which means to depart. Now this verb is used not to indicate to leave a room or to leave for the day, but literally means to leave for a trip, to depart for something. And it's often used with the preposition da, partire da, leaving from, or partire per, to leave for, or depart for. Okay, let's take a look at this conjugation. We have io parto, tu parti, lei parte, lui lei parte, noi partiamo, voi partite, and loro partono. Now, without the subject pronouns, it would be parto, parti, parte, partiamo, partite, and partono. Now remember, in Italian, we often don't use these subject pronouns because each verb form is unique, thus it's not necessary. We do use them sometimes when there's ambiguity, or if we're trying to be emphatic about something. However, it's never incorrect to use the subject pronouns. Well, let's take a look at another ERA verbo, and this would be a verb that uses ESH. And what occurs here is with this verb capire, we have something that happens, so we don't simply just take off the ERA ending and add the O, EA, iamo, ite, and ono, but we insert a stem in between the ending and the root. And this is the ESHE. This only happens in the io, tu, the lui, lei form, and the loro form, and it does not occur in the noi form and the voi form. We often call these boot verbs or shoe verbs because when you outline the verbs that use the ESHE, it makes the form of a boot or a shoe. So let's go over the pronunciation of this. It would be io capisco, tu capisci, lei capisce, lei or lui capisce, noi capiamo, voi capite, and loro capiscono. One more time without the subject pronouns. Capisco, capisci, capisce, capiamo, capite, capiscono. There are a few verbs that use ESHE, And they have to be memorized because there's no way to know just by looking at it. So here are some common verbs that you will run into that use ESHE, and they are as follows. Finire, to finish. Capire, to understand. Pulire, to clean. Spedire, to send. Preferire, to prefer. Colpire, to hit. And colpire means to hit in a literal sense, or it could mean something more figurative, as the idea was very interesting and it hit me or it struck me. Okay, well, all of these follow the exact same format as capire, inserting the ESHE between the stem and the ending for all the forms except for the noi form and the voi form. Looking at a couple of example sentences, we have Lucia preferisce mangiare con Marco, meaning Lucia prefers to eat with Marco. This particular construction of preferire plus a verb in the infinitive could be really useful because we could express a variety of preferences of things that we enjoy doing. One way to do this is just simply conjugate the verb preferire for whichever form you're talking about and following with a verb in the infinitive. So if I wanted to say, I prefer to go with you, I would say, preferisco andare con te. Okay, our next example is, capisci l'italiano? And if we wanted to say, yes, I understand a little Italian, sì, capisco un po' d'italiano. Looking at our next example, we have, finisco il compito, poi vado a casa, meaning, I finish the homework, then I go home. Our next example is finiamo la riunione alle 3, meaning we finish the meeting at 3 o'clock.
Taking a look at the form of an ARA verbo, let's take a look at the endings here. First we have io, o, tu, I, lei, e, lui, lei, e, noi, iamo, voi, ete, and loro, ono. The first thing that you will notice is that the voi form is highlighted in yellow. And once again, this is to point out that the only difference between an ARA verbo and an IRA verbo, which we previously looked at, is that voi form. It's ete rather than ite. So let's say that one more time without the subject pronouns. O, I, e, iamo, ete, and ono.
Our next example is an ARA verbo, meaning to take something to eat or to drink or to take transportation or medicine. Okay, and here are the forms. Io prendo, tu prendi, lei prende, lui, lei prende, noi prendiamo, voi prendete, and loro prendono. And do notice in the voi form we have the ATA or ETE ending, which is the only difference between the ERA and the ARA forms, is that we have this ete instead of an ite here. Otherwise, though, the form is identical. So one more time without the subject pronouns. Prendo, prendi, prende, prendiamo, prendete, prendono. Okay, well, let's do a little bit of conversation here. And using the verb prendere, I'm going to ask, what are you having? Che cosa prendi? And if we're talking about a meal and I wanted to say I'm having a first dish and a second dish or second course, I would say, prendo un primo e un secondo. Okay, looking at the verb vedere, which means to see, and vedere we can also use when we're talking about visiting a family member or visiting a friend or anyone for that matter. We don't use the verb visitare, to visit, when we're talking about people. We only use the verb visitare when we're talking about visiting a city or a place or something like that. or museum, whereas vedere can be used to indicate to see or also to visit a person. Quando vedi tuo fratello? When do you see your brother? And I could respond by saying, I see my brother every day. Vedo mio fratello ogni giorno. Next we have the verb rispondere, meaning to respond. And I could ask, do you all respond to the message right now? Rispondete al messaggio adesso? And I could respond by saying, no. We respond to the message later. No. Rispondiamo al messaggio più tardi. Next we have the verb partire, which, as you may recall, means to depart from, if we're using it with da, or to depart for, if we're using it with the preposition per. So if I want to ask, are you all leaving from Naples? I could say, partite da Napoli. And if I wanted to say yes, we are leaving from Naples at 6:30 in the morning. Sì, partiamo da Napoli alle 6:30 di mattina. Okay, next we have the verb preferire, which, as you probably recall, means to prefer. So if I wanted to ask if Laura prefers to take the bus, I could say, Laura preferisce prendere l'autobus. And if we wanted to say no, rather, or instead, she prefers to walk, we could say, no, invece preferisce camminare.